Hi, I'm Keith McCullough, and welcome back to A Real Conversation. And this one's going to be a dandy. I have Marc Cohodes, which is again one of the legendary short sellers on Wall Street. He is known in many different corners of the earth. Many of those corners you've hopefully never been to. But I don't know what to call you, Marc, other than right on some really big things over the years. You've been called many other names. Some of my Canadian brethren, I think, were calling you a chicken farmer or something like that. You do have free-range chickens, but you also have free range on this show to say whatever you want. So thanks for taking the time to join me. I certainly appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Keith. It's quite an honor, and I'm all set to heat it up as hot as we can go.
As hot as we can go. Well, and hopefully, I mean, this is the first of more than a couple conversations. And what I'd like to do, because you have so many ideas, and obviously frauds and bad people are revealing themselves to the world all the time, hopefully through the lens of people like you and I that can find them. They don't want to find us. But I want to get into your process first, just so people can understand. We've been demonized. We've been called the bad people. So I want to make sure that first we go through your process and then get through the kinds of people that you find within your process when you find what you think is a short. But maybe just first start with like an opening volley on your process itself.
Okay, that sounds good. So anything I say, folks, it's my opinion. I have very strong opinions. I do an inordinate amount of work to form those opinions, but before you do anything I say or talk about, do your own work, and everyone's an adult, and if you're a kid, check with your folks first. My process is I don't really care about stock valuations, and I don't really care about well-managed or good companies. I won't short a stock because it's high. I won't buy something that it's low. I think legitimate people, I wish them nothing but the best. They don't know who the hell I am, but all the bad actors in all parts of the world know who I am, which sort of speaks volume to what goes on. I really try. I use sports metaphors a lot. Usually in shorts, I try to find the Ken Griffeys of bad companies. Ken Griffey, in my mind, was the best ball player I've ever seen. He could hit for power, average. He could run, RBIs, leader, could field. If he wasn't injured as much as he was probably the greatest ball player of all time. Still's outstanding. So I try to find bad managements, bad motives, ripping off people, innocents, whether it's insurance companies, seniors, payers if you're in medical. I look for bad accounting, and I look for people who have no respect for the law, no respect for markets, and no respect for free speech. And occasionally I find some of these actors and companies, and then I get involved in a big way. And I'm sort of project-based. I don't have a diversified portfolio. I don't view myself as portfolio-based. I look at things project by project by project. And usually when I'm really onto something, companies or players or paid trolls make it personal. They threaten my family. I have a disabled 32-year-old son who lives on the property. We built a house for him. They threaten him. They threatened to kill him a few times. And in extreme cases, bad actors actually bribe sitting senators to have the FBI come by and visit me and tell me to quit tweeting. That was the most extreme thing I've seen. So that's my overarching process where I try to find things. And when I dig in, I tend to dig in deeply, and I don't move until I want to move. So sadly, I am not a normal person. I don't sleep much. I have a restless mind. I give my wife and my kids a lot of credit for dealing with me. I'm loyal to my friends to a fault. I have a lot of friends, but very few who I'm very close with, because I tend not to trust people, and I sort of view the world as the only one I can count on the process is myself. So I don't rely on others. I don't, contrary to popular belief, work in a wolf pack, but I am a nasty motherfucker when you stir me up. And right now I'm beyond stirred up on a few things, and I can't wait for these things to meet their end. And then I'll try to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. But I just turned 59 and I feel spry, but certain years have been dog years. I've been through a lot, really good and really bad. And you learn from the bad, and it's very important to enjoy the good, because the good doesn't last. And when you move the needle or make a difference, a lot of people want to see you fail, and serves as extreme motivation for me. Yep. So that's my overarching look on things. And I really respect greatly free speakers like yourself who lean against the wind, and people should pay attention to you. They should pay attention to Real Vision, and they should completely and utterly ignore CNBC, which I call the Cartoon Network, which sort of does the financial community a disservice. And it saddens me to see what goes on. So that's my quick and dirty on that.
Well, I wanted to give you the opportunity to say that, and like anyone who has a real process, I mean, you say it simply and succinctly, but you also, self-effacing about this. I mean, I on a personal level, I can certainly associate with what you say and how you feel about this. I mean, you have, to a degree, the Trojan horse has been Twitter, so our free speech has been amplified, but on the same the other side of that coin is that, even before the show, I was talking to Dan Holland. I said, my eye's twitching. What the hell's wrong with me? He's like, did you sleep last night? I said, no, not really. Because, you got to get up and crank. If you're going to go after the old wall and all of its media and all the bad guys, then it's a lot of work. So I appreciate that. And sorry to hear that your sons had to go through that. That's ridiculous. That's terrible. My sister has cerebral palsy, so I can associate with something as disgusting as people doing something like that. And oddly enough, that was another company that you found through trying to find good for your son. So we'll get into that too. But
just along those lines, right? Currently with this thing called MiMedx actually pays people to stalk me and troll me. And really? Some of the stuff has gotten beyond serious. And this is a letter from my attorney to the FBI in Denver and the Denver police in Denver about a guy named Todd Rinaldi. Twitter seems fit to knock down critics of Tesla and people who say bad things about Tesla, but they have no problems with people who are trying to kill me. And my lawyer writes about a guy named Todd Rinaldi, and he says Cohodes is a Twitter user where he primarily engages in discussions about investments in companies. He talks about MiMedx. Todd Rinaldi is an investor in MiMedx shares, or he may be operating at the behest of MiMedx. First, the tweets contain the following threats. Rinaldi writes, I walk around my house day in, day night thinking of you piece of shit, trashy life. It's coming, motherfucker, emphasis added. Shortly thereafter, Rinaldi wrote, all I do is think of you. Next day, I want to think of yourself as North Korea. Next day, think of me as Nicky in the movie Casino, and I look at you and think of you as the Irishman. Nicky was the murderer played by Joe Pesci in the movie Casino and murdered the Irishman by putting his head in a vice. The next day, Rinaldi writes, it's coming, motherfucker. Next day, Rinaldi posts a picture of a murdered victim and wrote, MDXG, this is you, Mark, which indicated that Rinaldi planned to kill Mr. Cohodes before he did not like what Mr. Cohodes was saying about MiMedx. So this is a guy on February 1st, 2018, after a review of Rinaldi's history, the Colorado Dental Board determined that Rinaldi had violated the Dental Privacy Act and voted to suspend Rinaldi. Rinaldi can no longer practice medicine in Colorado after he admitted he suffered from narcissistic personality and impulse control disorder. These are the kind of people on Twitter who are paid by the likes of MiMedx to stalk and threaten me to keep me quiet. and it won't work. But folks, there comes a time where enough is enough. And enough is a fuck enough when it comes to these names. And I will not stop at great price to my wife, my son, my family, and myself. But if anyone from Twitter is out there, and any free speaking attorneys are out there, it's time to curtail the abuse that Keith gets, that I get, Fraser Paring, other free speakers get, because sooner or later it's going to get dangerous, and it's not right. And free speech is free speech, and the president claims he wants to be a free speaker, but I do have rights. And I've been sued many times, threatened many times, but enough's enough. So this is what I have to go through, right? I don't ask for this, but I go through it. But one thing is, I will not stop. I will not stop till these guys meet their fate. And again, it's the underside of what goes on for speaking your mind. And if I have to be the poster child for change, it better change, and it should change quickly. So I just wanted to get that off my chest, that I'm not making this stuff up. And you know, it's sad I have to pay lawyers what I pay them just to defend myself.
Yeah,
so,
that's bananas. I mean, and so are some of these people, obviously. But that is scary. I mean, on many levels. Do you think, if Twitter is our Trojan horse, Mark, and at the same time, it's also their horse coming right back at us. I mean, would you have it any other way, or is this just part of the deal?
Well, the truth be told is I use Twitter to talk about certain names, but Twitter is a great vehicle. It just needs to be policed a whole lot better, because I get tremendous sources on Twitter.
Yeah, me too.
There are a lot of people who have great information on great names that I'm involved in who reach out to me through Twitter. And it's very, very important. What also is important is people can't hide behind anonymity and threaten people. It's okay if you want to go to a baseball game and boo the crap out of Reggie Jackson as he hits one 500 feet over the fence. But what's not okay is to hide behind anonymity and threaten people, and threaten disabled people, and threaten my wife, and bribe a senator to have the FBI visit me, where the FBI said if they have to come back again and tell me to quit tweeting, there will be consequences. Right? I mean that part is over the edge. And my attorney, who's a former U.S. attorney, is all over the FBI in San Francisco and the DOJ and other things about this guy Isaacson who teed it up, the senior senator from Georgia, and the FBI. But no one does anything. It's just, it's, I think, part of the deal till something changes.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Twitter something bad
is
happens.
Great,
mm-hmm.
but it just needs to be policed a little better than it is.
Let's get into this. Let's get into this MiMedx. Just this Pete Pettit, if that's how you pronounce it, and the Arkansas, the senator from Arkansas. Just so that people, a lot of people are listening to this and probably a little taken aback by how serious this is, and how serious the work that you do has become to you personally. Can you explain what's happened here with this company, and A, why you're a short seller of it, and B, why it's come to where it's come to with the FBI coming to your house?
Okay, that's a good point. So I'm lying on my pink couch one day a couple of years back, just doing some reading, and Carson Block calls me and he says, "Have you seen what MiMedx is writing about you?" And I say to him, "What the fuck is a MiMedx? I've never heard of this thing." So he points me to the website, and I'm being called a money launderer, head of a drug cartel, work with Hell's Angels, things like that. And I said, this is just absolutely crazy. So I call my attorney, says this is defamation. He writes MiMedx a letter and says, you take it down or we'll come after you. MiMedx takes it down. They send a letter apologizing, and I post it on Twitter saying, here's this MiMedx. 10 minutes later, 15 to 20 former MiMedx employees are all over my DM, sending me one piece of bad information after the next of what this company is. Channel stuffing, ripping off, bad science, the whole thing. I then say, send it to my email. And I was speaking at Grants, I think, in 6 days, the conference in New York. And I had my presentation in. I said, this MiMedx is so outstanding. I'm going to start talking about MiMedx. So I make a little MiMedx presentation. And it turns out through FOIAs that day, Parker Petit reached out to Senator Isaacson about what I was talking about. And that's when the FBI activity actually began. It had nothing to do with what I was tweeting about with MiMedx. It was Parker Petit actually bribing and paying a senator. I have a copy of the canceled check from MiMedx to Isaacson to get them to shut me up.
Wow.
And then it's just been something ever since. It's been crazy. I got so fed up with it. In January. I think this was one of my greatest accomplishments, and I've done some crazy stuff over the years. On January 23rd, I wrote the auditor of E&Y a letter. His name is Andrew Brock, who's actually a hero. They should give him a raise at E&Y. Dear Mr. Brock, please see the primary source documents, court documents, and analysis on what I believe to be the 12 categories of serious wrongdoing at MiMedx. Each category is bound separately. Some categories are too large for one binding and are therefore bound across separate volumes. The additional volumes in these categories have the same title. I have identified 12 distinct categories of egregious wrongdoing. I've dubbed MiMedx an around-the-clock fraud. Please see the following table for contents. Thank you. Please contact me, Marc Cohodes. I give him my phone number. Around-the-clock fraud. Medicare fraud, 1. Endangering patient safety, 2. 3. Undisclosed federal criminal investigations and evidence destruction, 4. Bullying, threats, extortion, 5. Abusive process, 6. Old boys club, which includes rape and sexual harassment, 7. Influence pending, 8. Securities fraud, 9. Accounting fraud, 10. Kickbacks and bribery, 11. Stock fraud, and 12. Criminal organization targeting and promoting known criminals. Now, I sent that letter on January 23rd, and the auditors at the end of February said that they need to walk away, back up, do an internal investigation, and it's been downhill for them ever since. And I haven't stopped. And our mutual friend, Grant Williams, did a Real Vision with me in January, and he said, I know you're driven on MiMedx. It's a great story, this, that, and the other. Are you still shorted? And I said, yeah, I'm still shorted. He goes, why don't you cover your short, and that way carry on as normal, but then people will realize this is all about the cause and not making money. So for the first time ever, I was in a Wall Street Journal video about a week ago. I covered 98% of my short in MiMedx after I spoke with Grant, because I want everyone to know right now MiMedx has nothing to do with money for me. This is all about principle and seeing these undesirable motherfuckers in this criminal operation brought to justice. So when this company is fully exposed for what it is, and there's criminal wrongdoing going on as we speak, with people who are currently there meeting with federal police as we speak, right? When this thing happens, I want everyone to know this has nothing to do with money for me. This is all about principle. And I won't stop. Till it happens, because they're injecting veterans who this country should salute with absolute poison, provable poison in this product. And the current management is aware of criminal activity. And there's a 96-page whistleblower report that I have access to. And I don't trade the stock. And I don't want to trade the stock for that reason. But what's going on there now, contrary to what anyone knows, MiMedx is a criminal operation. And I defy them to attempt to try to come after me, because I will hit these guys with everything I have, and they've seen nothing yet. Because when this comes out, it needs to come out what's exactly going on in the Medicare, Medicaid, insurance scam, VA system, because our veterans are being ripped off, they're being injected with bad medicine, and all of the bad actors at MiMedx are still there. Parker Petit will go to jail, and his henchmen will go to jail or get arrested if there's such a thing in circa 2019. But this, pound for pound, is the biggest fraud I've ever seen. And I exposed Learnout and Houseby, which was the biggest fraud in Europe at the time, and it still may be.
So which went to zero. Yeah, that's a statement and a half.
Which went to zero. So the head of regulatory at MiMedx, a guy named Rogers, these guys have destroyed adverse events in their products without submitting them to the FDA. They've destroyed adverse events, at least 60.
Wow.
And everything is being covered up. Senior management knows this, but they carry on. And everyone thinks it's great because they've brought in a new lady who used to be an investment banker at Robertson Stevens, and everything's fine, and they have an activist in there and all's well. But just wait till they uncover things. Just wait. It's going to be something.
Well, the incentives component of this, and this is, I want to unpack this, quickly because, the great insult they think to us, the short sellers, is that we're only doing it to make money. Whereas if you really look at the incentives, what we're uncovering here are people that are doing everything that they're doing, fully loaded with illegal activity. And suffice to say, that would understate what you're saying. What's happening at this company? That's all they're doing it for. This is this business, and everything that supports it, the fully conflicted and compromised network that is CNBC, that supports the non-exploration of these things, is all about making money. There's absolutely we shouldn't have to apologize for that. What we're trying to do in this case, in the case of people that are being fed poison, or in the case of Learnout and Houseby, which is just trying to sell kids like yours a very bad and whatever you would call it, Trump couldn't even describe it with more adjectives type product. That's what this is about. This is about actually being transparent, accountable, and truthful. And I don't know why we end up being vilified for that. This is America, for God's sakes.
Well, it's America, but then as we go to Canada, I have a friend in Canada, his name's Adam Spears. So he's walking the streets one day, and someone walks up to him, a pal of his, and says, "Cohodes, what do you think of him?" And he says, "I love the guy. I think he's great." And I said, "That's nice of you to say." And his buddy says, "Why?" He said, "Because he took on Fortress in syndicated mortgages in Canada. He probably saved the system $5 to $20 billion by exposing what goes on at zero profit to him and at great risk." Right? There was no stock play I was involved in with syndicated mortgages in Canada by exposing Fortress. And all I made were enemies and people threatening me. But I helped expose and bring down ripping off hardworking Canadians. And I wasn't short anything in syndicated mortgages. Same thing with money laundering in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I mean, in Vancouver, I'm a hero. In Toronto, they want me dead. But I've exposed money laundering. I've exposed what goes on with housing. The Attorney General there is my pal. But when you speak truth to power, and there's so much money on the other side, and that's the real issue here, Keith. There's so much money wanting to see me fail or be wrong or shut you up or shut up the likes of Howard Penny or the free speakers or things like that for exposing things that are wrong. They would just as soon see me quiet, dead, stifled, the whole thing. And they work overtime to make that happen.
No, they don't just work overtime, Mark. They work together. And this is the big thing that a lot of people miss with the cabal that is the old wall and its media. It's from all different angles. They work together. They lock arms. They lock arms and go after you. I remember when we were making and I'm like you in this case because I actually put rules around myself. where I can't short the stock, like let's say Lyne Energy, which was a fraud, and it went to zero. I didn't make money on short selling the stock. I made money on illuminating it to institutional clients that were being lied to by not only the company, but Leon Cooperman, who also took a personal stake in the company, who I went into his office and he tried to, he didn't try to kill me or anything. This is Leon Cooperman. But at the end of the day, we get paid like investigative journalists used to. I had a tarbell against Standard Oil. I mean, that's the part of America that I'm talking about. And at the end of the day, I think that people may understand that the other side is what has the most to lose from a monetary perspective. The last thing on this, I want to hit on a couple other companies because we only have a certain amount of time. By the way, if you have questions for Mark, fire them in the queue. I'll try to get to them as best I can. But on this Parker Petit, Parker Petit. You said this is one of the most epic, or the most epic frauds that you've seen, to paraphrase what you said. Like, is there something about Parker that is very similar, or I guess a common trait amongst pretty much every fraud that you find?
He on a couple of these Real Vision deals that I've done, I sort of classify there's 7 types of things you look for, in these things, and one is fraud. All these guys are hugely narcissistic, including my old friend Kevin O'Leary when he ran SoftKey, who's recreated himself many zillion times, who's just a complete adjunct failure in everything he touches. Parker has been doing this for 30 years, and he has huge enablers in Isaacson, who's the senator from Georgia. He gave money to Georgia State, donated them their worthless MiMedx stock. When you have been a serial fraudster for 30 years and you threaten, bully, harass, sue, extort everybody, you think you can't fail and you think you can get away with it again and again and again, and you're actually above the law. Parker, in his own ways, and he's 5 foot tall, which is an issue and an indicator. He wears a wig. Anyone who's a CEO who wears a wig, I think I'm now 16 out of 17 success rate in shorting CEOs who wear wigs. He never smiles. I think he's missing his teeth. So when I see someone wearing a wig who runs a company, I think I will short the stock on the spot. I mean, literally. And he's small. And he's a bully, and I went up to him at a JP Morgan conference because he was harassing me, and I literally walked up to the stage. I got down on my knees because he's a small man, and I shook his hand, and he was shaking like a leaf. So these guys who tend to attack the messenger rather than a frauded BioVale. Then he went to Concordia. He sued me in Canada for saying that he was involved in nonsense. So when companies attack messengers rather than focusing on the message, you tend to be on the real right track. And there are certain guys out there right now who are doing that, who are doing that. And that's a tell, and that's a sign for me to really dig in. So I don't mean this in a pervy or weird way, but I'm a stalker. I watch what's going on like a hawk. I watch it from the back of my head. I watch it straight forward. I watch what's going on. And something right now that's going on that I just can't stand, right? And my emails are hacked all the time. If they had anything on me, they'd come with it. Is this Wirecard in Germany? Wirecard in Germany is a $20 billion market cap company, trades at roughly 50 times earnings. I don't care about the multiple. But these guys literally threaten skeptics by showing up at their kids' school, getting in people's cars, holding them at gunpoint, threatening them. The company is suing the Financial Times. They got the German regulator to put a short sale ban on the stock. Roddy Boyd, who I think does the greatest forensic accounting and journalism work of our era, writes about Wirecard, and he was out here the other day, and Roddy Boyd said it's the biggest fraud he's ever seen. He says it's of epic proportions. And this is a $20 billion company, 20 billion on the DAX, where BaFin needs to put in a short sell rule because they said it may adversely affect the German economy. Now, I've not done the primary research on Wirecard. I read everything that's out there. But they threaten people mercilessly. They sue everyone mercilessly. It is the publicly traded vehicle of money laundering. Money laundering is a worldwide problem. If you're in Russia, China, the US, Cuba, Canada, everyone knows money laundering is a huge issue. And in all the work that was done by the great Dan McCrum at the Financial Times, Roddy Boyd, and others, it's all out there for the public to find. I urge everyone to dig into Wirecard because you cannot, as a country, sue the Financial Times about all these wacky conspiracy theories without getting into the details of what they're talking about. It is just wrong. And I employ everyone in the mainstream media worldwide to look into what Wirecard is trying to do to the Financial Times. Because it's just like Khashoggi, right? If you don't like what someone says, they just have you killed. If you don't like what the Financial Times writes about, the Germans just sue and open up an investigation into the Financial Times. And it's the death of free speech, and it's the death of truth to power. And it's something that is so remarkable, it is the line in the sand.
Yeah,
Carson Block is getting investigated in France criminally. He's getting investigated in Germany criminally. Carson Block, he's a legitimate operator, as is Fraser Perrin. Daniel Yu is getting investigated in Germany. I mean, fuck. The ASC comes out of the blue and sues me for an emergency order to quit tweeting about and talking about and trading Badger Daylight, right? Emergency order. So I had to go hire another Canadian attorney, right, to take the Alberta Security Commission to court, and I won. And I won instead of saying, fuck you, I just don't even care. It's just the principle of trying to shut everyone the fuck up. And it's just wrong.
Yeah, it's all interconnected, and at the end of the day, that's why these people, that's why the mainstream media, in particular on Wall Street, is like I said, it's conflicted, compromised, constrained, and these people are all in it together. That's why O'Leary and O-Shares comes to be. It's how he gets paid on it, and then it gets cut in half, or whatever it's worth today. I don't even care. What I really care about, and people should care about, is that not once did Melissa Lee, who went to Harvard, or any of the journalists at CNBC ever call him out, ask him a question about it, ask him about SoftKey. Instead, they give him a name like Mr. Wonderful, and right beside Jim Cramer telling you to buy Lyft on the open, these guys are the ones that are losing mom and pop all the money. So that to me, it was a great revelation, Mark. I just couldn't believe it until Maria Bartiromo, just to give you one piece of info you probably didn't have, I used to be on Fox. They wanted to destroy CNBC. Maria was over there. It was great for me, like in terms of people actually figuring out what Hedgeye was. What the greatest blessing was actually figuring out how uniquely conflicted and compromised the media was right to its core. But the minute that we wrote a short-selling report on her husband's company, Wisdom Tree, I was done in not only her world life, but never to be on Fox again. Now, and that is journalism. That is quintessential journalism. That is what we have today. If you go to power with the truth, and the truth gets them in a position where they've been revealed, or anything for that matter, it's just you're roadblocked. And in your case, you get death threats and FBI visits. I haven't quite had that yet on the FBI visits, but I guess after this discussion, I might get one.
Well, you may or you may not, but Cramer, I like, and I respect him because at least Cramer was on the field of play. Cramer at least was a market professional, ran a hedge fund, and I've known him forever, and I disagree with him vehemently on many names. But the guy tries, and he was in the money management business. O'Leary is was a complete blowhard, and he masterminded this soft key fraud, which I was involved in, and I used to, and I think I still scare the living shit out of him because I exposed soft key. I wrote letters to Learning Company. I wrote letters to Mattel not to buy his fraud out, and they still did it, and they paid for it dearly.
No, but he's a cash flow guy. You didn't hear it. It's a cash flow of a company called SoftKey that, from what I understand, never had any cash flow or free cash flow.
Never had any cash flow. It was a scheme. It was a roll-up. It lost money. It was a dusting thing, and he ran a scheme, and he knew it. And, you know, he just doesn't like it that I call him rat face. He looks like a rat, and he acts like a rat. I mean, if you look at him with black, he's just a complete rat. So you want to know another name that I have that I'm very serious about that is the Ken Griffey right now?
Yeah.
It's a company called Lynette. Trades symbol LCI. It's in the generic drug business, which is probably the worst business right now on the planet. It's the most leveraged company out there. They're more leveraged than Teva. They just lost 60% of their business, which is Levo. And by my estimation, they gouged the U.S. government for over $300 million since Levo was theirs. Why is it so great? One, they're leveraged probably six to seven spins of leverage, depending on what number you look at. They're not going to make any number going forward. Their gross margins are artificially high. But what's truly amazing and truly wonderful is Forbes just wrote an article about generic drugs and generic drug pricing and price fixing, which hurts everybody. The generic drug industry is being sued by the state of Connecticut and 44 other states. I think the DOJ is going to go after them. But they highlighted a lady by the name of Maureen Cavanaugh, who helped rig 107 drugs at Teva.
Oof. She's
now in the exact same role at Lynette. And since all this stuff has broken about the 44 state lawsuit, the only thing that Lynette's announced is that their CFO is leaving. They haven't put out an 8K about the suit. They haven't conducted an internal investigation. Maureen Cavanaugh and others still have a job. And this is a company whose core competency at 7-to-1 leverage is ripping off the seniors, Medicare, insurance companies, everyone.
Wow.
And these companies should not be in business. They should not be in business. They have $800 million of debt, $250 million of market cap, and next year they're not going to be able to make their interest expense. But yet Wall Street looks the other way, and I'm highly confident, though can't prove it quite yet, that the company pays a pump and dump artist named Guy Gentile, who should be in jail if you Google him, to pump the stock. So I go to Twitter and say you should be very careful about looking and following pump and dump artist Guy Gentile into this Lynette, because that's all he does. And he tweets out, "The only thing I pump and dump is your wife."
Oh my God!
And he's constant about that. So it's like, brother, is this really where you want to go? But I spend day and night digging into their drugs, who they're ripping off.
Yeah.
And the CFO has said, "Uncle, I have to walk." Yeah, and this is the audit quarter, so it should be something.
Yeah, where this comes back, and again, this is to serve and protect. I mean, is the way you and I see it against fraudsters, and really, like I'm just pulling up the holders of this stock. I've never even heard of this stock, by the way, nor do I have an opinion on it. But you know, if BlackRock owns it, or J.P. Morgan owns it, or whatever, State Street owns it in a passive or active fund. And it is what Mark says it is. And by the way, the stock has been a disaster going back to when it peaked back, looks like in 2015. Yeah. I mean, you lose money when that happens. So it's the whole other side of this needs to have some illumination on it. Why would D.E. Shaw, by the way, why is D.E. Shaw own 11% of the stock, Mark?
Because it probably shows up on some screen and they think it's cheap and they want to play a game. I mean, people who are following MiMedx, the biggest holders of MiMedx, other than Parker Petit, were all these index funds.
Oh, so it's indexes and quants that don't do the research. They just own the exposure.
Exactly. And people wrote letters to the index funds and the quants saying, why do you own MiMedx? This, and this, and the letters are thrown away. MiMedx gets delisted, and all the index funds sold the stock at between $1 and $1.50, down from 15. And again, CNBC and the likes try to make this investing, it's sort of like investing for dummies. It's sort of the difference between pro wrestling and amateur wrestling. They say indexing funds or quants or this, that, and the other. It's garbage in, garbage out. I mean, I spoke at Harvard and I told some of the young people there, instead of being in private equity or VC or where you can make a lot of money, run an index fund, but run an index fund where you screen out the garbage. Screen out MiMedx, screen out Lynette, screen out Lyne Energy. And if you run an index of companies that fraud detectors aren't after, it would be a hugely successful product. I mean, shit, you guys should do something like that. You could take an S&P index and say, what are the 50 to 70 names we want to exclude? I mean, I was all over Signet Jewelers. If you would have excluded Signet and a couple of others, you'd have vast outperformance. But these guys own everything, and they say it's a cheap way to do it, but you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. You know, and people think that if they can watch CNBC for free, it's great. But people should drop $200 and subscribe to Real Vision, or drop whatever you charge people and listen to you. You don't get it right all the time. You can't get it right all the time, but you give it your level-headed best. I, and you and others, the few others out there, truly take pride in what they do. I hate to lose and I like to win, but there's nothing I hate more than losing and or costing people I know money. I hate it. I hate it.
Me too.
I hate it.
It's the worst. You know, I'm gonna get into some questions if you don't mind here, Mark, because you're getting, like, as you might imagine, an unbelievable amount of questions here. Actually, a lot of questions on a name you mentioned, but I don't know if you want to, go off too much on it. But can you comment on Musk and Tesla and what you see going on there? Does this fit a fraudster? Is the question.
Tesla. I'm short Tesla. I've been short Tesla. I'm not the authority on Tesla. There's been some tremendous work done on Twitter by the so-called Tesla Q crowd. An Indian fellow came to me with all sorts of issues that Tesla was stalking him. They gave him a temporary restraining order. I suggested he start a GoFundMe page. He's raised $150,000. He'll be going after Tesla. Tesla is one of the greatest things I've seen. I'm pals with Einhorn. Einhorn thinks that Musk is worse than P.T. Barnum. I think Musk has destroyed what little is left of the SEC and their reputation by challenging them and them backing down. I think Tesla is entertainment unto itself. And I'm a passerby in Tesla. I think it's something, but there are authorities in Tesla, and I'm not one of them. I'm spending my time on Lynette, MiMedx, some time on Wirecard and some other stuff. But Tesla you're on the right track with Tesla.
Yep. Okay.
And you guys have done a great job with Tesla as well. Your guy's been all over it.
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure, and that's...
Yeah, with us, it's, I think, the bigger our brand gets and the more powerful kind of our voice gets on the platform, it's harder for people to show up with death threats just because, we have 80 people here. I mean, it's real people with real credibility. So we actually haven't had any lethal threats from Tesla on our work. What's interesting...
Musk tends to pick on the weak.
Yeah.
He doesn't go after real men. He goes after boys.
Yeah.
He goes after faceless people who he thinks don't have the wherewithal to fight him.
Yep.
And on Tesla, to your conflict thing, Melissa Lee's husband, Ben Callow, is the biggest bull on the street at Baird, and there's never any disclosure on CNBC that her husband is the chief tout of Tesla. I mean, she sits there and defends Tesla up, down, and sideways, which is her prerogative. Totally fine. No problem with that. It just should be disclosed that she wakes up and goes to bed with the same guy who's the chief tout.
No, I agree. I agree 100%.
And it's just wrong. And to Cramer's credit, I mean, I know a lot of people, again, lightning rod him. To his credit, he's called Tesla for what it is. I mean, he does call Musk a carnival barker, and you know, he can say it could be okay for a trade, but he's pretty much called this thing lately for what it is.
Yeah.
To that, I give him some credit.
To be clear on Cramer, I actually appreciate his bravery. I don't appreciate his accuracy on a lot of different things, but the reality is that, you know, he called me in charge of a bear raid on Lyne Energy, that I was shooting against Leon Cooperman. Then Cooperman went and said that I was shooting against the rest of his bullshit MLP longs that were all frauds. I mean, he actually got a Wells notice for what he was doing, and Cramer supported it, and he knew it, and he tried to make me look like I was the bad guy. And at the end of the day, so did Business Insider. It's the cabal. That's what I meant by that.
Well,
that full circle is like, it's just wrong. I don't do that.
I get it, right? But I'm an old man. I go back with Cooperman to when he was the chief strategist at Goldman.
Yeah.
And Cooperman's a Goldman guy, and Cramer's a Goldman guy, and Goldman guys defend Goldman. And I've been after Cooperman, and I've been short a lot of his longs over the years. And the one thing I'll say about Cooperman, I have a love-hate relationship with him. When you're right, he usually calls you up and says, you were right, I was wrong. I mean, Cooperman makes an inordinate amount of mistakes, but he gets some stuff right. And I've always thought that Cooperman, at least with me, he's always played me straight up. He goes after me hard when I'm coming for him, but at the end of the day, if I'm right, he congratulates me. So, you know, Cooperman's Cooperman. He's an old man, but I don't agree a lot with him, but I respect his standing.
Yeah, at least Cooper. I mean, I'm not kidding you. He had me and Kevin Kaiser, our analysts at the time, in his office with the CFO of Lyne Energy. He called him, and then he couldn't get him, and got the CEO on the phone on speaker with us sitting there. And he put the guy's feet to the fire. He said, I'll never forget this. He said, these guys have nice suits. They have nice suits. Yeah. My analyst, and he had his analyst in here, who's this guy who's sweating bullets, this I think Bank of America banker guy, MLP guy. And he said, you know, if these guys with the nice suits are right, you're getting fired. And he pointed at his analyst. So he was actually like vetting it at least, whereas a lot of these people just hide. And I got to give that, I mean, Lee Cooperman, he does that.
That's his MO, and I give him a lot of credit for that, and that's why he used to turn over his analysts huge at his firm. I was on the other side of him with an Iomega supplier called HMT, and he got the lady on the phone, he got the management on the phone, and I said, here I am, and here's why this thing's going to zero. And I think HMT actually went to a negative number, and Cooperman said he fucked it up, he got it wrong, but at least I respect his game. I don't agree with his game, but I respect it. I respect Cramer's game.
Back to the point, like whether or not, you know, it's people that actually, then you got the posers versus like, you know, O'Leary, the downtown Josh Brown, guy's never shorted a stock in his life. I mean, these guys are like pure unadulterated posers. Literally, they would go to your Ken Griffey example, walk into a major league stadium and try to mock Ken Griffey and not have to take a cut at a fastball. These guys are like a joke, but that's who CNBC loves, and I love to compete against that because again, you're going to make a lot of money over time competing against that type of thing.
But the Ken Griffey analogy with stocks, if you look at your stock and say, is this Ken Griffey? You know what? Amazon, and I've never been long it, and I've never been short a share. Amazon is the Ken Griffey of longs. Yep. It really is. It's well run, well managed, dominating, good balance sheet, end to end. And I don't give a shit what multiple it sells for. I would never be short Amazon. If you think the market's going to go down, sell other longs or buy puts. But if Amazon's the Ken Griffey of longs, Lynette, Wirecard are the Ken Griffey of shorts right now. Yeah. And then there's nothing like Parker Petit. There's nothing like or ever will be like MiMedx.
Yeah, that's something I've had to learn the hard way over the years as a young buy side analyst who would short stocks. You know, I had to learn that, you know, valuation's not a catalyst. What is a catalyst is the momentum of the business, which Amazon clearly has had. And if you can't show me a deceleration in that momentum and or fraud, it's not a short. Expensive gets more expensive the whole way up.
Well, it's the same thing in my mind with Netflix. I mean, I'm pals with Pachter at Wedbush, and people may trade Netflix and do whatever, and great. Knock yourself out. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat. But to me, Reed Hastings is a man. I mean, that guy is an operator and has buried the skeptics over a long period of time, and he's takes the high road always, never badmouths or tries to shoot messengers. He just said it's what it is. If he fucks up, he owns it, and if he gets it right, he gives other people credit. So, my hat's off to guys like him and all the other good operators out there. I just wish I wasn't so messed up in the head that I could have owned these things over time instead of, doing what I do. But, that's my problem.
No, I got my own issues too, clearly. But a lot of questions here. I'm just going to start throwing some tickers at you. One that we're getting a lot, obviously, is Overstock. What do you think there?
Well, Overstock. I like Overstock. I own Overstock. I'm a believer in Overstock. It's all there. I respect Patrick Byrne greatly. We used to be arch enemies. Now I'm his friend. The guy's a 3-time cancer survivor. Last year, sadly, I lost 6 close friends to cancer. So that's a dreaded fucking disease. Mm-hmm. And so I admire what the guy has been through. He's a visionary second to none, but he has not executed. He has not executed on anything he has said, and that's why the stock's where it's at. I wrote a letter to the board. I've made my position clear that Byrne should be the chairman or non-executive CEO, that they should bring in a Wall Street friendly CEO to run the company, and we'll see what happens. I'm not an activist. I'm too busy. I'm too old. But if they kick Byrne upstairs and bring in a Wall Street friendly person to sell off or monetize MiMedx assets, which is their blockchain part of their business, and sell retail, and retail has had numerous bids, which they've passed, sadly, the stock will do really well. But what you see is what you get. At $10, I own it. I liked it. I bought it at 15. I talked about it at Grants at 30. It went to 90, and now it's 10.
Yep.
So I own it. I wish I was short it higher. I'm not, and I've been wrong. And I own it, and I give all the skeptics credit, saying that Byrne can't do this, Byrne can't do that. He's fallen down in his execution, and hopefully they bring in someone who can execute. But it's sadly, it's show me from here, but I'm there.
Cool. All right.
I'm there.
Here's another. I mean, this is actually, there are a lot of questions on Trump and this stock market mania that people refuse to call what it is. Actually, we have a good chart that we're posting, I think tomorrow or the next day, on just profitless tech companies, the market cap versus when it was last time at this level. So clearly we have a bubble when you have stocks like that and beyond bubbly or beyond meat, whatever it's called. But this question, I think, articulates it pretty interestingly. The present administration, i.e. Trump, there seems to be an insane focus on stock market levels. It's my opinion that that's not healthy over time. My question for you, Mark, is will this lead to our economy's actual undoing, an eventual bear market that actually lasts longer than anyone expects?
That's an excellent question in the way it's phrased, and some of that I'll defer to macro guys like you, but I will say this. I think Trump is a evil genius. I think he plays the media like the finest instrument there. Everyone hangs on every one of his words, and I think he's manipulated this whole trade thing. He's castrated the Federal Reserve to lower rates or make things easy. Markets at all-time highs, and people are so addicted to drugs, they demand the Fed ease, and it's a giant market game. Now, I'm not a market guy, and I frankly could care less about the market. I assume the market's going to go up every day of my adult life, which is why when I short stocks, I tend to short stocks that aren't dependent on stock market.
Yep.
Lynette's going to go out of business regardless of the market. And if Wirecard's doing what I think they're doing, the stock market's not going to matter to them, like it didn't matter to Deutsche Bank either, or MiMedx. But what I will say with Trump is his only chance of getting reelected, and I think the chance is not very great, is a very strong stock market. And if he can get people to focus on the stock market, if he can get people to focus on a white horse with black zebra panels painted on the horse and call it a zebra, he'll get reelected because everyone will focus on the stock market and say, I'm the greatest president of all time, look at the stock market. But the problem is we then turn closer and closer to more of a banana republic, where free speech is only free if you're bullish. I always say the market is like injecting a pig with LSD, but this pig has been injected with a lot of LSD. You just don't know which way it goes. When the glass is half full, right? Everyone likes it because they say the Fed is easy. But I could easily see a scenario where they're worried about something where people panic and it goes down. But he needs a strong stock market to get reelected. He needs to scare people on trade, then say, look how great I am doing a trade deal. It's kind of like a shitty company cutting estimates for the first quarter. We expect earnings in the 15 to 20 range, down from 50 cents. The stock gets killed. Then when they report earnings, they report 25 cents, and then everyone says the number's much better than expected. Then the stock goes and makes a new high because it's better than expected. But no one realizes how lower the bar has been. And this whole Federal Reserve stuff, I just defer to smarter people than me because I have to stay focused on what I do. Otherwise, people will knock my head off. But you've been, to your credit, Keith, and no one likes when you take credit and no one likes when you pat yourself on the back, but you deserve a lot of credit for your gold call and your bond call because you've been dead right, and you've been dead right for the right reason, which is one of the reasons I'm appearing on this, because you have my respect. Because being right is hard enough, but being right for the right reason is really hard, and you were right for the right reason. So,
thanks.
I tip my hat to you. So,
well, we're coming.
People should subscribe more to Hedgeye and get your view and the Real Vision guys as well. So,
well, thanks for that. I genuinely appreciate that. It's nice to get some acknowledgement sometimes, but again, most of this has to do with my teammates and the process that we built, and we're just, we're doing, again, when you're right for the right reasons, that's important. What you want to do, as you know, in your career, is actually make some mistakes and learn from them. So I've obviously made plenty of mistakes in the public sphere for everybody to see too. And I like to think that you're being right now is a function of being wrong in the past where I learned something. Right. I think a lot of people they're not in the business of learning. They're not in the business of calling people out. They're not in the business of calling themselves out. And that's why they don't evolve, and that's why they don't get better.
Well, the trick really, again, this is a baseball thing. But if you're in May and Reggie Jackson is batting 191 and you're the hitting coach or the manager, you just don't tinker with him.
Yeah.
You may drop him in the lineup a spot or two, but you just say, keep doing what you're doing because you're one of the best that's ever been, and eventually it's all going to even out. You'll have a great August, a great September, and you'll have your typical year. But what people tend to do in this business, when you've gotten some high-profile stuff right, is they wish and they bet and they troll on you to fail. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to get it right all the time, but you have to stay true to your process. And you stay true to your process, and given all the threats and the shit I take, I try really hard to stay true to what I do. But it's not easy. It is not easy getting your ass handed to you and losing and people dogging you for it. And I was on a Grant's podcast, and I told people what a great short I thought Stamps.com was, and I think the stock doubled. And I have everyone ride my ass on Stamps, and I say, look, I'm sorry, and no one's paid a bigger price than me, right? And truth be told is, I lost my fucking ass on Stamps. I lost my ass. And the stock went from, I think, 120 to maybe 280. And the other day it was 35. This is in the past year, so it's been destroyed. And then everyone says, great, great, great. You know what? And doing what I did, I'm up in my stamps trade about a Snickers bar and a Big Mac and a can of Coke. And I feel like it was one of my greatest accomplishments because I so buried myself in stamps, right? And I so buried my friends. I thought that break even would never feel so good. So I think I'm going to make a lot of money on stamps from here because I think they're in a worthless business that's a dinosaur like the payphone. But man, it is hard. People don't understand when you speak your mind, right, and what standards you're held to and how many people shoot at you. They don't understand how fucking hard this really is. And I don't have a business. I mean, I'm doing this because I don't know what else I would do other than drive my wife and kids crazy, right? Because I don't want a business. I just do this. I speak from time to time. But what people don't understand is it's easy to throw shit at people in the ring and in the squared circle. But try walking in Keith's shoes or my shoes just for 5 paces. It is just a bitch. I couldn't see it any other way, but it is just not easy. And it is not easy doing this kind of stuff. So,
and if it was, nobody, I mean, at the end of the day, you said this to me right before we got into this conversation live. And you said, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be so passionate to work so goddamn hard. And that's the key. You know, this goes all the way, and this is, you know, vintage Americans, Teddy Roosevelt. It's the man in the arena. And that's what it is.
Exactly. You know, I'm the man in the arena with MiMedx. And the people reaching out to me, both who work there, who are senior people, and people who've left. I mean, this is the true tragedy of the whole thing. One lady who they leaned on, who was deposed in a case, she wasn't exactly mentally stable, and after the deposition, she actually killed herself. I mean, this is stuff that will eventually come out, but they're responsible for certain people's deaths by putting so much pressure on people who knew stuff, they were leaning on for things. This lady actually killed herself. Did MiMedx kill her? No, she was unstable to begin with, but they pushed her and they've pushed others over the edge. I mean, the average person, I mean, I said this to my wife and I love her dearly. The average person, if the FBI comes by your house, agents, and they have guns and they don't show you per se their identification, and they tell you in front of your wife that if you don't stop and we come back, there'll be consequences. The average wife either tells her husband immediately, I'm leaving you, honey, if you don't stop, or I'm leaving you immediately because I can't deal with this and what is wrong with you. Yep. And my wife and my son, you know, my son was sitting there, you know, and he has a sensitive nervous system. And I had my friend over for lunch that day, Billy Buckingham, and it was the second to last time I ever saw him. So it's hard because he shortly thereafter died. You know, these motherfuckers from the FBI go and start hassling me with these people there. Yeah. And it's just goddamn wrong. You know, it is just wrong. And
it's intentional and wrong, which is worse.
And it's intentional, it's premeditated, it's against the law. And, you know, people talk about PTSD, you know, it's a real thing, you know, and I try real hard, you know, to fight through it. But, you know, everyone, you know, including yourself, you know, there's a built-in level of paranoia you have, right? Are my emails being hacked? Am I being followed? You know, this, that, and the other. Well, let me tell you, it's real. I know I've been hacked. I mean, I know I've been followed. I know people are out to get me. It's not paranoia. And the problem is that people should be, who speak their mind and stuff like this, need to be protected. They should be given a wide berth and say, thanks for doing this work. I mean, I was in Gretchen Morgensen's book about mortgage fraud, this reckless endangerment, and I read parts of it for motivation, you know, each day, you know, when I get down on myself or bad things happen, and it says, this is on Novastar and the government not doing anything till it was over. I said, it would be interesting to see who exactly dropped the ball and why, Cohodes said. It would be interesting why nothing was ever brought. The SEC should have sent a plane for us to come to D.C. and how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? How do we train our guys to do what you did so Joe Sixpack, the investor, and our entire society doesn't melt down to the center of the earth again? Well, this is what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and Keith, with generic pricing. This is what Lynette is doing to people. This is why they hire Maureen Kavanaugh, who should be in prison for ripping people off. And she's bringing the same playbook she brought at Teva to Lynette. This is why Wirecard launders money. This is why they're a conduit to it. This shit should be stopped. Or injecting poison to the vets. Or Keith and Hedgeye doing what they do. It's there to stop. You can fix it if you want to fix it. But by all means, don't try to grind people into oblivion just to get the price of the stock higher at Broad and Wall. It's artificial, it's fake, it won't work. And when it blows up, the crazy thing is, they blame the short sellers. In 2008, what did you do? Yeah. A short sell ban. Short sell ban on financial stocks because John Mack was worried about shorts grinding their stock to the ground. Instead of him running a fraud and doing all sorts of shit he shouldn't have done, it's deflect blame. Paulson, Rubin, right? Bernanke, Geithner, all these guys. It's amazing what goes on. But it's beyond my pay grade to fight that. I'll fight the lowlifes who are out there.
Well, thanks.
And there are way too many.
Thanks for doing that. I think one person in the queue didn't ask a question. They said, "Just thank Cohodes for the therapy session. I needed it." And a lot of people feel the way that you do, but not very many are willing and brave enough to get up on my channel here and say it in all of its color and detail like you did. And I don't think anyone's going to do that. Maybe if there are other people out there that want to do what Marc just did, that are actually in the arena, and that's the key. In the arena, your face is marred with dust, sweat, and blood. You've been shot at, you've been threatened. Everything that he's gone through. That's the real deal there. And it's not about Marc being right on every single thing or wrong on every single thing. This is about actually standing up and saying, this is what I think is going on, and being held to account on those views, which of course he is. So, Marc, I just want to thank you for that. Sincerely, I know the audience has as well. You're one of a kind.
Well, the one thing I'll say, and I said it on Real Vision, the only job that I'll ever do again is I actually want to run the SEC. I actually think, even though I'm not a lawyer, if I ran the SEC, the market would actually be higher than lower because I could weed out. There's so much low-hanging fruit out there to weed out. It would be great to do, and it would serve and save the public from what's coming at some point in time.
Well, I think you just put in a nice audition for that job. You might be getting that might be the next call you get from the government.
Well, I think it would be for a while, but I would actually move to DC. But the whole thing is to actually make a difference. I think if Gretchen Morgensen and Boyd and I ran Health and Human Services and medical, I think I could trim 40% of medical malfeasance in 3 weeks just by eliminating fraud. But it's out there to do rather than a platform of shorting shit-ass companies. So who knows?
Well,
I have to do something after this because I'm too restless and things are too messed up out there.
Yeah, you got a lot of energy, Marc. You're going to be around for a long time. So
I have energy, but my arm is very tired, and some days I don't know if I'm coming or going.
Yeah, you and me both. That we do have in common. So thanks again. It was a real conversation. I really appreciate it.